Never miss our updates and be part of our conversation squad.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Manthan talk. Today's event is being held amidst a real wildfire of COVID infections in Hyderabad. Some of us at Manthan are down, but we're going ahead. Vikram, who you would normally see every week, he's down with Manthan, but he will be listening in. Joining me today is Challa, who you have met before. And the speaker today is also from Hyderabad. Fortunately, he is well. He's Professor Bhangya Bhukya of the University of Hyderabad. He teaches history at the university, and he's also been the head of the department. Professor Bhukya has written a number of books on Adivasi society as well as on Telangana. His most recent book, which will be the subject of his talk today, is on the history of Telangana until I think 1724. So he will speak today on the cultural heterogeneity of Telangana. The interesting thing is that Telangana, while being the center of the country and really, as he says, in the path of many invasions from the north, has been able to retain its distinct identity. So, Professor Bhukya, it's all yours. Please go ahead. I think you'll have to unmute your.
Okay, thank you, Ram. I actually, at the outset, I thank the Manthan India for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts on Telangana history. I also take this opportunity to appreciate the Manthan India's effort in organizing a public discourse on democratic, liberal, and secular values. So that is that this country cherished for a long period. Let me begin the talk by referring a popular quote that there is a unity in India. There is a unity in there is a unity in diversity in India. This was first said by a British historian, Vincent Smith, and later popularized by Jawaharlal Nehru. The fact that India is known for its diversity, and the diversity itself is its strength. India's diversity is now at risk under the present regime. We are discussing the cultural heterogeneity of Telangana in the backdrop of present regime's project of homogenization of Indian culture. If you ask me what is Indian culture, the diversity itself is Indian culture. Telangana is known for its cultural heterogeneity from the early historical period. Being a gateway to South India, it witnessed many political and cultural invasions from the North India. But it retained its core cultural ethos. The distinct cultural heterogeneity of Telangana is very much rooted in its heterogenic environment. The Telangana environment is characterized by a sloppy terrain, gneissic plains, and sandy soils, which determines not only the economy of the region, but also the food culture of the people. The soil of Telangana are mostly reddish, sandy, and sandy loams, which were popularly known as chalka. The chalka soil were mainly intended for dry crops. The rocky landscape and the red soil have thus given a physiographic and ecological heterogeneity to Telangana. This geological heterogeneity had analogs in the social formation of early society. That is why Telangana has devoted a distinct social formation. The Deccan Plateau comprises distinct geological sub-regions broadly aligning with present-day Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka. Among all the Deccan sub-regions, Telangana has witnessed an extraordinary ecological diversity and has thus accommodated widespread settlements over centuries. However, Telangana has survived assimilating those new external cultural influences without losing its old cultural foundation. External influences have always remained superficial because the geological heterogeneity of Telangana has not allowed the complete submergence of its culture into an external culture. The early settlements of Telangana, which were founded on artisanal activities, are significant to understanding the socio-political and economic culture of Telangana. Unlike the other regions of Deccan, Telangana directly entered in the megalithic culture, surpassing the Chalcolithic age. This is mainly because of the rich availability of iron ores in the region. Copper objects are scarcely found at the Neolithic sites of Telangana, and that too only in the southern parts. Thus, pastoral activities along with a craft-based economy have remained the fundamental character of the Telangana economy down the centuries. Particularly, the availability of iron in the region has shaped the social formation and history of Telangana, which has resulted in the emergence of a considerable number of occupational social groups and communities. These economic and social formations have been critical in both evading and assimilating foreign influences within the region. The Telangana region was also able to evade the influence of the Mauryan Empire. The critical engagement of the people of the region with the foreign forces has kept Telangana's identity intact. The geographical and socio-economic formation of the region has facilitated such a history. One can even see a striking difference between North and South India in terms of a political formation. Unlike in North India, the Deccan did not allow imperialistic politics to grow in the region. Imperial political formation were resisted by not only the local chiefs who enjoyed considerable autonomy, but also by the people. This tendency also put check to a centralized administration in the region. In almost all the South Indian kingdom, the local chiefs yielded considerable power and enjoyed symbolic suzerainty over their territories. This is evident from the very formation of the state in Deccan and the Deep South. It is evident from the history that Telangana has always been a political charged region in which many Deccan dynasties took their birth. All the Deccan dynasties, starting from the Satavahanas to the Asarjahis, based their seat and rose to power here. Telangana Deccan rulers also challenged North Indian imperial politics and maintained their own political identities. The Deccan evolved into three politico-cultural regions by the 13th century, namely the Maratha region under the Yadavas of Devagiri, the Kannada region under the rule of the Hoysalas, and the Telangana region under the rule of the Kakatiyas. This formation was largely based on language. The Brahmanis tried to unite the Deccan by creating a overarching culture called Deccani, which was Indo-Persian and secular. Unlike the Delhi Sultans, the Deccan Sultans promptly adapted the local culture and deepened a new culture without disturbing the core culture. The Deccan rulers frequently asserted their powers in their respective regions. Based on its politico-cultural foundation, the Deccan rulers indeed maintained tactical relationship with the Delhi rulers. From the beginning of history, it was a general practice among the Deccan rulers that they would surrender to North Indian imperial powers when it was strong and asserted their power when it weakened. The North Indian imperial rulers too, knowing the autonomous tendencies of the Deccan rulers, did not insist on merging Deccan territories into their own empires. Instead, the imperial powers allowed the Deccan rulers to rule their territories even after their defeat in war. They demanded that the imperial suzerainty be accepted and annual tributes paid regularly. Those empires which tried to merge the Deccan into their own did not last long, as in the case of the Mughal rulers. After they took over the Deccan, the Mughal rulers lost their control over all the regions, including the Deccan, and were confined to the surroundings of Delhi, as all the others regional powers challenged their imperialistic politics and asserted their powers in their respective territories. Hope the present regime witness the same thing. The Deccan states were slightly different from those of Gangetic North India and Tamil South India, where Brahmanical ruling values were well established and strong. Aryanization had gained momentum from the time of Pallavas in Tamil and coastal South India. By the time Aryan culture reached central Deccan, that is Telangana, the local Sudra culture had come into prominence. Although there is a dispute among historians about the caste of the Deccan rulers, all the dynasties which ruled Telangana were headed by Sudra kings, except the Vakata caste. The strong presence of Buddhism and Jainism in the region too did not allow Aryanization of Telangana. The Deccan Sudra rulers did perform Brahmanical ritual following their coronation ceremony, but one has to see this as a diplomatic act to legitimize their position as rulers within the broader Brahmanical idea of kinship. Performing sacrifices and granting land to Brahmins were important gestures in statecraft. Interestingly, no Deccan Sudra king aspired and climbed the Kshatriya Varna within the fourfold Varna system. Question is, was there Vedic religion in Telangana before the spread of Buddhism in the region? Before the spread of Buddhism, Telangana was inhabited by various tribal groups that were headed by the strong chiefs who ruled from the fortified towns. It is difficult to name them all, but some of them have been identified in recent studies. They include the Asmakas in the Nizamabad district, Sebakas in Karimnagar district, Pulindas in Adilabad district, and Mahisakas in Nalgonda and Mahbubnagar district. These tribal groups were worshippers of Yakshas, Naga, and mother goddesses. The Yakshas and other natural gods, such as the snake and sun, are evident from the terracotta figures found here. Telangana has been home to a number of cults, beliefs, and religious practices from the early historical period. Like any other society, the Telangana society too worshipped natural gods and goddesses before the development of institutionalized religion. The earliest belief system during the hunting and food gathering stage of history involved human worshipping nature and animals. It was believed that nature had a superpower. When women turned to food production, mother goddesses were treated as a symbol of creation and production. Thus, the practice of worshipping the Naga and mother goddesses had spread across India even before the coming of the Aryans. Naga and Nagini worship or serpent worship are still prevalent in Telangana. The Aboriginal Gond community in the region worship Nagoba, the serpent god, with utmost ritual even today. Every indigenous clan has plants and animals as a totem, which are worshipped along with their family goddesses and gods and elders. This practice has been in prevalence from the early historical period. Archaeological evidences suggest that there was widespread worship of mother goddess in Telangana from the megalithic period. A figure which typically represent the present day mother goddess of Telangana has been found at Peddabankur. Two types of figures have been discovered here, one with the upraised hand and the other holding a bunch of fruits with a parrot nudging the breast. The Dulikata figure of the mother goddess holds her two prominent breasts with her hands from below. A number of terracotta figures of mother goddesses and animals have been found at Peddabankur, Dulikata, Yeleshwaram, and Nelakondapalli. These figures are handmade in which women's features, particularly their breasts, are depicted as pointed. A goddess is shown standing naked in a pool of lotus bathed by two elephants, along with the worshippers of the mother goddess. The early Telangana people also participated in the Naga cult, considered to be the worship of the powerful serpent beings. A figure of a snake made of iron has been found at Peddabankur in the later period. The figure of the Naga was also associated with the Buddha and Shiva. The Muchalinga Naga protecting Buddha Pada are the entwining of the Naga around Buddhist stupa shows the continuity of the Naga cult even during the heights of the Buddhism in Telangana. The worshipping of Mahisha and Nandi, buffalo and bull, also continued in Telangana. The Trisula and Sulam iron rods with the sharp point, which have been found in Telangana in large number, were associated with the Shiva and Durga in the later period. Thus, some of the early religious forms, particularly of the mother goddess, Naga and Nandi, have remained the core of the Telangana belief system even after the strong tides of institutionalized religions. Telangana belief system is very close to nature and production system and simpler in practice. That is why early form of Buddhism and Jainism and reformed Vedic religions were welcomed in the region. Buddhism and Jainism from their birthplace in eastern India spread to Telangana during the lifetime of the founder Gautama Buddha and Mahavira respectively. According to Sutanipita, the great saint Bhavari left Kosala to settle in village on the bank of the Godavari in Asaka Janapada, which is now identified with northern Telangana. Bhavari was the first person to adopt Buddhism in the Telangana region. The village, the village he lived in his is identified with the modern day Badankurti in Adilabad district. He sent 16 of his disciples to Buddha in order to learn his philosophy and teaching. Out of the 16, only Bhangya returned to Badankurti, and the rest greatly influenced by the Buddha's preaching and choose to continue their life close to Buddha. Bhavari, upon learning the greatness of the Buddha's philosophy from Bhangya, converted to Buddhism. He was responsible for the spread of Buddhism in Telangana. Buddhism and Jainism have had a tremendous impact on the social and cultural life of the Deccan people for about 1500 years. Buddhism from 300 BC to 600 AD and Jainism from 700 to 200 AD. Both the religions were born out of the conflicting socio-economic and political development of 6th and 5th century BC India. It is difficult to explain the ways in which Buddhism spread in Telangana, but Buddhist artifacts and remnants found here speaks volumes. The archaeological findings suggest that early Buddhism or the Hinayana sect was widespread in Telangana, as early figures worshipped by the Buddhists have been found in the region in abundance. The finding suggests that before the introduction of the image of the Buddha around the middle of the 2nd century AD, a variety of symbols of Buddha, such as the Buddha tree, Dharma Chakra, Triratna, throne, swastika, Buddha Pada, and Chaitya or Stupa were worshipped. The Chaitya were built to enshrine these symbols. Among all these symbols, the Buddha Pada was the most popular. They were generally associated with either a throne, a lotus, or a flaming pillar. The Bodhi tree, which symbolizes enlightenment of Buddha, was also widely worshipped in Telangana. Although Jainism and Buddhism disappeared from Telangana, they have had a strong impact on the social and cultural values of the people. Jainism was not purely a trading and ruling class religion. It also reached the masses through various programs. Its proponents gave up all the orthodox practices, including nudity, and began wearing white clothes. The 12 vows, which were important if one wished to become a Jaina, were not enforced too rigorously. Meditation before the Paramatma for at least 48 minutes a day, or the observation of 24 hours of fasting at least once a year, was sufficient to free one from misery. Thus, bhakti or devotion had become central to Jainism. The use of local languages like the Prakrit in the early times and Kannada and Telugu in the early medieval period attracted the masses. Vows such as abstaining from conscious injury to living things, abstaining from falsehood and theft, etc., brought in massive following from the trading and merchant communities. The trading guilds particularly became stanch patrons of Jainism. For example, the Ayavalis and Mumi Dandas. The guilds, as well as individual traders, gifted lands and money to the Jainalayas and Satras for their day-to-day maintenance. The Satras, which provided food and shelters to the poor people, were crucial in attracting the masses to Jainism. This practice was later appropriated by Cyberism. The Komatis, who were the main trading community in Telugu region, were initially followers of Jainism. The term Komati is said to be derived from the Gomata tradition of worshipping the cow in Jainism. The worshipping of Gomata is called Gomati or Komati. Of course, later in the 16th century, the Komati embraced Cyberism as narrated in the Vaishya Purana, which is said to be articulated in the same century, and climbed the Vaishya Varnam. Even Brahmins like the Kannada poet Pampa, who disliked Vedic rituals, embraced Jainism. Although Jainism disappeared from Telangana, its notion of charity lives on in many respects. Buddhism also underwent many changes in philosophy and practices over time and became accessible to the common people. Although craft people and merchant groups initially supported Buddhism, it eventually gained the overwhelming support from the Ghapatis, or the rural peasant classes as well. They donated to the monasteries generously. In certain areas, they were backbone of the Sangha monastery. Broadly speaking, a Buddhist follower were of two types: monks, that is bhikshus and bhikshunis, who lived on alms, and lay followers who largely constituted Ghapatis and craftspeople. Donations from the second group were crucial in meeting the day-to-day expenses of the monks living in the monasteries. In the Deccan, epigraphic evidence suggests that these lay followers made the largest donation, greater than even the merchant classes. They believed that the serving the monks would bring happiness, a long, long life and strength. They also followed the codes of conduct and morality laid down by Buddhism. The Buddhist monasteries, which were spread across the region, played an important role in bringing the tribal and other lower castes into Buddhist fold. Every monastery was headed by a monk or chief monk, and functioned with the help of a caretaker called Uparikata. There was no rigid hierarchy within the monastery setup. The social base of Buddhism soon widened further with the spread of the Mahayana sect. Mahayana Buddhism had broken down the monopoly of the monks as a means to attain nirvana. It preached that a life lived within the framework of dharma would help attain nirvana. This assured followers that anyone could potentially become a Buddha. This created a hope among the common masses that their life could be improved upon the perfected. The Mahayana believed that Gruhastha family life was not a hindrance to attaining nirvana. And this attracted the cultivating communities in a big way. The spirit of cosmopolitanism of Sangha life led many of those belonging to the lower varnas to embrace Buddhism. The use of the local Prakrit language also attracted the masses. After the decline of the Mauryas in the north, the Deccan became the main center of Buddhist activities. Nagarjuna-konda turned into the main philosophical center and gave birth to several new philosophies. The Buddhist sculptures produced in Nagarjuna-konda as well as in other parts of Telangana and Andhra were unmatchable. The contribution of Buddhism to the development of the crafts, trade, and agriculture was tremendous. The social and spiritual morals transcended into productive relations and paved way for the overall development of society. The humanistic and rationalistic values spread by Buddhism have remained the core value of Telangana society. Thus, Buddhism and Jainism philosophy and tradition have been central to Telangana society. Both religions contributed to the flourishing of trade in the region. That was the reasons of why the trading communities was at the forefront of the patronage of these religions. Besides promoting economic activities, they played two immediate historical roles. During the early historical period, Buddhism largely succeeded in putting a check to Vedic religious practices in Deccan, particularly in Telangana, while Jainism rescued the newly emerging Sudra ruling class when it was struggling to elevate its social status. By the early medieval period, a number of the Sudra chiefs had asserted their power across the Deccan. Although they were politically powerful, the Brahmanical social system treated them as inferior and did not allow them to improve their social status, in which in such a situation, they embraced Jainism. However, from the 13th century, they preferred Vira Saivism over Jainism as a means of rising their social status. Both Buddhism and Jainism were killed in the region by Brahmanism. When Brahmanism evolved Puranic theism to check the spread of Buddhism, the Buddhists made efforts to protect their followers by broadening their practices. But the new form of Buddhism, which came in the form of Mahayana philosophy, reduced Buddha as the ninth incarnation of Vishnu. This argument gained currency such that all the great Mahayana philosophers, such as Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Bhavaya, Asanga, Vasubandhu, Dinnaga, and Dharmakirti were Brahmins. However, it was two Brahmin scholars, two Brahmin scholars of medieval period, Mallikarjuna and Somanada, who were responsible for wipeout of Buddhism and Jainism in the Telugu region. Buddhism and Jainism were replaced with Saivism, and this continues to this day. The Saiva cult has been widespread in Telangana from the early historical period. All the famous temples in Telangana are Saiva temples. Saiva is said to be a primarily Dravidian god. He has been described in Brahmanical literature as Dakshinamurti. However, the Saiva cult is seen as an amalgamation of Vedic Rudra and the Indus Valley Pashupati philosophies. Saivism started developing more prominently in Telangana from the period of Vakatakas and Vishnukundis. From the 7th century onwards, Saivism had begun branching out into different sects on the basis of Diksha. Okay, the Diksha cult, which centered on an Acharya, made Saivism a popular religion. Each Acharya formed a mata and took up human welfare activities. This helped the Saiva Pandits or Acharyas each reach out to the masses. Among the Saiva sects, Kapalika, Pashupata, Kalamuka, Aradhya Saiva, and Vira Saiva were important. Vira Saivism was widespread in the Deccan between the 11th and 13th century. Basveswara from the Karnataka and Mallikarjuna Pandit Aradhya from the Telugu region were preachers of this philosophy. However, over the course of time, only Basveswara's teaching came to be known as Vira Saivism, while the Pandita teaching formed the Aradhya cult. This cult was a manifestation of a new sect of Saiva Bhakta followers known as Virabhadras, Mailara Bhattas, Viramastis, who worshipped heroism in the Saiva cult. The Vira Saiva movement, which started about the close of 12th and beginning of 13th century in northwestern Karnataka, had a strong impact on the Telugu region. The main supporter of this sect were priests, traders, peasants, and craftsmen. The priests, who were called Jangamas, were instrumental in spreading the Vira Saiva philosophy among the masses. Because of its anti-Brahmanical and anti-caste philosophy, it caught on very quickly. However, it did turn orthodox in the later period, particularly Aradhya Vira Saivism preached by Mallikarjuna Pandita accepted the caste system and Vedism. The Vira Saiva movement was in fact a response to the changed socio-economic condition of the medieval period. From the 8th century onwards, a new political class had emerged among the Sudras, its members were accommodated in the Rashtrakuta, Chalukya, and Kakatiya administration. Although they occupied higher political positions, they were denied higher social status in the Varna system. The reformed Brahmanism in the name of Vira Saivism accommodated these Sudra peasants caste by offering them the Kshatriya Nagavarna. Similarly, there was also tension between Jaina and Brahmin traders who emerged from the temple economy. From the early medieval period, the whole of the South India trade was dominated by Jaina trading guilds. This had become a serious challenge for Brahmin traders who took to attacking Jaina traders in the name of the philosophical war between Vira Saivism and Vira Vaishnavism. The attack on Jaina centers in the Tamil country, which were started by the Alvars and Nayanars, gradually spread to the Telugu regions as well. Many Jaina centers were converted into Saiva temple in the Deccan, including Telangana. The Vira Saiva movement started against Brahminical orthodoxy and the caste system, ended up legitimizing the claims of the Sudras for a higher position in the Varna system. The development of the Telugu language also came as a boom to Neo-Brahmanism, which came to form the reformed Vaishnavism propagated by Ramanujacharya of the Tamil country. Telugu poets and literary personalities, namely Nannaya, Ketanna, Tikkanna, Nannechoda, and Annamaya, Potanna, Srinada, Jakkanna, Ramadasu, and Tyagaraja were instrumental in spreading Neo-Brahmanism in the Telugu region. However, the Vaishnava tradition was more popular in the Andhra region, which was close to Aryan culture. In Telangana, Cyberism was more widespread. In Telangana, only the Velama chiefs of Rachakonda followed Vaishnavism because of the influence of the Vijayanagara kingdom and the relation they maintained with them. But it did not spread among the masses. It appeared that they worshipped Vaishnava gods beside their family god Mailara Deva. It became fashionable among the newly emerged peasant warrior castes such as the Reddy, Velama, and Kammas to embrace either Vira Saivism or Vira Vaishnavism in order to rise their social status. The Saiva and Vaishnava priests related their ancestry with the established royal lineage, such as the Surya Vamsha and Chandra Vamsha. Trading and craft-based castes, such as the Komatis, Padmashalis, Vishwakarmas, and a few Panchamas, Jangamas, and Maladasaris were the main follower of Vira Saivism and Vira Vaishnavism. The Jangamas, mendicants of these cults, further linked their origin with the Brahminical gods, which resulted in the production of the Kula Puranas during the medieval period. The origin of each community was narrated in the Purana, and these communities often climbed a higher position in the Brahminical Varna system. In the process, many local gods and goddesses were also assimilated into the Brahminical fold. Telangana's spiritual culture, however, is thus mainly rooted in the cult of the mother goddess and that of Shiva, both of which were associated with Dravidian culture. Although the Brahminical culture spread to the other parts of the Deccan India, it did not impact Telangana much. Starting with the Satavahana, the ruling classes mostly belonged to the Sudra caste, and they adapted and practiced one or the other forms of the Brahminical religion. But this was confined to the ruling classes. Reformed Brahmanism in the form of Vira Saivism and Vira Vaishnavism did reach the lower caste, but not for long. Some of the local goddesses and gods were appropriated by Neo-Brahmanism, but the people continued to worship them in their own way. The lower castes also articulated the mythologies of their caste origin in newer way, often claiming a higher position in the caste system. But those claims were not respected by the dominant caste. However, the Sudras peasant caste, which was associated with the state military and administration, managed to negotiate a higher position in the Varna system. The Neo-Brahmanism of the medieval period that attempted to assimilate the Sudras into the Brahminical spiritual culture was not fully successful in doing so. The assimilation of Islam culture into Deccan had blended the Telangana culture further. Islam is an integral part of Telangana culture. It reached Deccan much before the Sultanate rulers did. However, the long Muslim rule brought the different sects and philosophies from West Asia to the region. The Muslim rulers, irrespective of their personal beliefs, patronized both the Sunni and Shia sects as well as the local religious practices. The Qutubshahis, who were Shias, but Sufism, which had sprang from the Sunni sect, reached its heights during their regime, producing a new belief system, social practices, and language in the region. Mystic Islam or Sufism was instrumental in creating a cultural synthesis in the region. The Sufi philosophy, which preached that the mighty is one, raised the gaps between the culture of the Muslim and the other non-Muslim local people. The Sufi cult was very strong in the region right up to the 20th century. The Sufi saint Sidi Sai Baba, who died in 1918, still draws a huge number of devotees from Telangana. That Sufism is deeply entrenched in the Telangana soil is evident from the dargahs, tombs of shrines of Muslim saints and Peer religious saints celebrations, which are attempted by both Muslims and attended by both Muslims and non-Muslims. Although Telangana represents a heterogeneous culture, there is an overarching cultural assimilation. This distinguishes it from the other regions of India. The Sufi saints played an important role in spreading popular Islam in Deccan. As a mystic form of Islam, Sufism prescribed the love of the absolute, that is Allah. Sufism was indeed a response to growing conservatism in Islam. Sufism developed a different devotional path through which the devotee could seek mystical insights and directly experience God. The devotional path of the Sufis, shaped over a period, is based on the Quran's message, the Hadith, and the preachings of the Prophet's intimate followers. Like the ascetics followers of the Prophet who lived on a bare bench outside the first mosque in Medina, the Sufis preached Islam by singing in local languages and through herbal treatment. A similar parallel mysticism is also found in Vira Saivism and Vira Vaishnavism and among the Byzantine Christians during the medieval period. Within Sufism, there were different variations, each formed into a separate silsila or order. The main Sufi sects popular in the Deccan include the Chasti, Suharavardi, Junaidi, Qadri, and Naqshbandi orders. Most of them were born in Persia but were shaped in India, particularly the Chasti and Naqshbandi orders which developed in India. The spread of Islam produced a blended culture in Telangana. Islamic culture influenced the local culture in many ways. Although there was an inflow of Muslim as trader in the Deccan from the early medieval period. The political invasions by the Sultanate rulers accelerated this inflow. A large number of the local lower castes embraced Islam because of the influence of Sufi saints who acted as a healer, preacher of moral values, and entertainers. They adapted the local language and culture in their daily preachings and won the people's heart. They are remembered and worshipped by devotees even after death. The spread of Islam produced an overarching cultural synthesis. The development of Urdu, the Dargah culture, and Urs celebration and Pirla Pandaga celebrations are some of the examples of cultural synthesis in Telangana. The cultural assimilation also reflects in language, literature, and art of Telangana. Telangana has historically been a multi, sorry, Telangana has historically been a multilingual region with several social groups and communities inhabiting the land. From the early times, each community has evolved and maintained its own language. Over a period, with the formation of a bigger states, these languages merged into the language of the dominant tribe. The development of the written script in particular saw the disappearing of several of the minor languages. Thus, the Prakrit language, which developed a script in the early historical period, became the dominant language in Telangana. However, some groups such as Gonds, Koyas, Chenchus, and other nomadic communities have managed to sustain their language, their languages. From the 3rd century BC, Sanskrit progressively replaced this Prakrit language in India. But by the 7th century, it took a backseat with the development of the regional languages. A similar pattern was also witnessed in the Deccan. The Telugu language developed from the Prakrit language. Prakrit was the lingua franca of India during the Mauryan period. The Brahmi script, which was used to write Prakrit, gave birth to Telugu script. There is a difference of opinion on the origin of the word Telugu and its association with the Telangana. In most of the literature, attempts have been made to prove that Telugu is the language of the Andhra people and that Telugu literature developed in the coastal Andhra region. However, recent research has observed that the word Telinga or Telinga would have been derived from the term Telivahana. The early Buddhist monks described the Godavari river as a Telivahana. The people living in the Godavari valley were thus called Telingas. The Vayu Purana also mentions the existence of Telinga Janapada. It is believed that the Telangana, that the language of the Telingas must have developed as a Telugu over a period. Telugu took a literary form in the Renadu, Kadapa region under the Renati Chodas, the Kakatiya the Kalyani Chalukyas, who spread their power over the present Kannada and Telugu-speaking regions, were responsible for the development of the Kannada Telugu language and script. Their inscriptions are written in this language and script too. The credit for the development of Telugu goes to the Sudras, peasant military chiefs, and mercenaries who rose to power from the various tribal ethnic groups of the region. Among all the chiefs, the Kakatiyas were the first to unite all the Telugu-speaking regions, which resulted in the standardization of Telugu as the state language. As the Telugu language and script developed with the support of the local chiefs, the Chalukyas also used them in their inscription to reach out to the masses. Religious institutions such as those run under Jainism and Vira Saivism too contributed to the development of Telugu. They preached in Telugu as it was the language of the masses. When Telugu had taken literary form, there were two parallel traditions in Telugu literature. One represented by Sanskrit and Brahmanic culture, and the second represented by Desi, local culture. The former was Margi, classical type literature, spread mainly over coastal Andhra. The later was based on local songs, ballads, and lyrics, and was found in the semi-arid regions of Telangana and Rayalaseema, where Brahmanical influence was mostly absent. Thus, in the early period, literature was divided along religious and regional lines. There were two dominant religious traditions in the early medieval Telugu regions, apart from Jainism, Vaishnavism, and Cyberism. The trends of these religions were reflected in Telugu literature. The Vaishnava group, starting from Nannaya to Annamaya, was mainly engaged in translating Puranic and Sanskrit texts to bring Brahmanism back into prominence after it had weakened with the spread of Vira Saivism. This group brought Sanskrit words, grammar, and genres to Telugu literature. The early Sanskrit Telugu scholars thus gave a new shape to Telugu literature, which had a profound long-term impact on it. The Saiva groups, on the other hand, wrote in local spoken Telugu, retain its idioms and flavor. Despite the influence of Sanskrit and Brahmanism, Telangana retained its original Telugu idiom and genres. Jainism and Vira Saivism had a strong impact on Telugu literature in Telangana. It was scholars from this tradition who produced the early Telugu literature in Janu Telugu, plain Telugu. Janu Telugu was first used by Nannachoda, a contemporary of Nannaya, and Palakurti Somanatha. From the beginning, there were broadly two types of Telugu: the Sanskritized Kampu Telugu and spoken Desi or Janu Telugu. Moreover, there were always a tension between the two. As the Telugu literature craft was adapted by the Andhra Brahmins from the Prabandha period, that is 16th century, Kampu Telugu became the standard Telugu, particularly in the districts of Krishna, Godavari, Guntur. On the other hand, the Telangana Telugu developed a different flavor with the influence of Urdu. It was mainly seen as Desi and folklore. However, the Telangana Telugu retained its Desi character and remained Acha, pure Telugu. Arabic, Persian, and Deccani Urdu also influenced Telugu from the 15th century. This influence was more apparent in Telangana, as many Persian, Arabic, and Urdu words were borrowed into Telangana Telugu and vice versa. Persian and Deccani Urdu became part of the Telangana literary culture from the middle of the 14th century. Persian remained the language of the royal court and of the noble in Telangana until the late 19th century. However, the assimilation of Persia with Dravidian and Indo-Aryan languages and culture produced a new language called Hindvi or Urdu. Urdu was the main medium of communication between Muslims and non-Muslims of the region. Thus, the new language became lingua franca in India in general, and in Deccan in particular, as the common people spoke it, and a considerable volume of literature was produced in this language. Telangana witnessed the evolution of several languages such as Prakrit, Sanskrit, Janu Telugu, Kampu Telugu, Deccani, and Urdu. the prominence of each language was associated with the social domination of a particular community or class. In the early historical period, the Sudra ruling class and Buddhism and Jainism developed the Prakrit language, but the subsequent spread of Brahmanism superseded it by encouraging Sanskrit. The Sudra peasant warrior class promoted Telugu to put a check to Brahmanism. However, the Brahmin Sanskrit scholars took over Telugu literature and brought back Brahminical domination through Kampu Telugu. This domination continued up to the 20th century. A similar trend was also witnessed in the case of Urdu. The shift in Deccani from secular to religious themes and the supremacy of North Indian Urdu or Deccani was a response to the political development in the region. But despite the tension between the languages, Telangana witnessed the development and survival of many languages, both literary and non-literary. The cultural synthesis is more apparent in the art of Telangana as well. Art and architecture expresses the socio-economic, religious, and political ideas of the society. In Telangana, since time immemorial, people have used rock cut painting, sculpture, architecture, portrait painting, miniature painting, scroll painting, and other artistic works to express their ideas and imagination. Religion has perhaps had the greatest influence on all art and architectural works. Although secular art and architecture did exist in the form of royal forts and palaces from the early historical period, it did not survive for long. It was only from the late medieval period that huge palaces began to be built. Art and architecture also constitute a power relation as they exhibit the domination and subordination of a particular social group or religion. This is evident in Telangana history too. Buddhist art and architecture dominated the early historical period, followed by Jainism, Cyberism, and Vira Saivism, and then Islamic art and architecture. However, throughout the prehistoric period, rock cut painting were the non-religious exhibits into the day-to-day life of the people and their worldview. The spirit for such painting was mainly drawn from nature. Importantly, the materials used for sculpture and architecture were drawn locally. For instance, structures in Telangana were largely made of black granites, which was found in the region in abundance. North Indian architecture, on the other hand, was mainly made of red stones. The environmental heterogeneity of the Telangana region thus brought diversity in the art and architecture. This style art and architecture is generally referred to as Dravida and Deccani style, which is unique in many respects. Art and architecture thus play an important role in understanding the deep-rooted ideas and expressions of any given society. Although there was a cross-pollination of ideas and traditions between Telangana and its neighboring regions, Telangana maintained its specificity. The culture of protest of the Telangana peoples is very clearly visible in its art forms too. Art has always been used as an instrument to express a dissent. As such, it is a valuable source when it comes to understanding human survival strategies and struggles. The artistic culture of the Telangana people is still evident in different forms, which have been crucial in articulating anti-state and anti-domination struggles. Indeed, art has inspired several political and social movements in the region, including the movement for separate statehood. Such local arts forms have not only kept the movement alive, but also been crucial in achieving statehood for Telangana. So I think I'll stop here and welcome your responses. Once again, I thank you, the Manthan India.
Thank you, Bhangya. Chala, would you start with the questions or would you want me to begin?
Yeah, sure. I can do. Thank
Chala,
you.
why don't you start?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Bhangya. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you at this point in time, are you saying that Telangana's culture is unique to the culture of the rest of the country? I mean, the Dravidian states, largely because of the influence of Jainism, Buddhism, or did it otherwise also have a distinct identity to itself?
Thank you. I mean, sir, as a kind of a gate of South India, as I said in the beginning, it witnessed many political and cultural invasions. So it was like a kind of fermentation kind of a bowl where all philosophies and culture and finding a place and assimilating into a different kind of culture. So if you see Telangana culture, it is a very much distinct from north as well as deep south in all aspects, whether it is in terms of belief system, in terms of language, in terms of philosophy, and the very resistant culture. I mean, so there is like I mean, so Telangana people won't tolerate any kinds of suppression and any kinds of orthodoxy. So I mean, so it will come, and I must say Telangana people are very choosy in the sense they take only whatever they wanted. I mean, so they don't generally go by the flow. Like when the westernization was happening during the colonial period as well. I mean, Nizam rulers were very conscious that we should take up or take only the scientific modernity and some administrative reforms, but we should keep our culture intact and protect it from Western culture as well. So there are incidences where Salarjung actually tells his officials not to take part in ball dance in residency. So I mean, there were a conscious effort by the rulers as well and to protect the cultural specificity of this region.
Professor Bhangya, there are many questions from the audience. Let me begin with one from Professor Shanta Sinha, who, as you know, is also from the university. The one question she asks is, what were the shifts in the socio-economic formation that resulted in Buddhism losing its base to Cyberism?
Yeah, I mean, Buddhism, it's again, I mean, as I explained, in Telangana, I mean, early Buddhist forms, Hinayana was very strong. And the moment Buddhism transformed into Mahayana, I mean, the orthodoxy was also coming. So that may be the region. And I mean, Mahayana actually flourished in Nagarjuna Konda. Okay, I mean, in the Amravati and Andhra region, the agricultural communities and trading communities actually welcomed that, but somehow Telangana people did not welcome Mahayana Buddhism. So maybe the growing orthodoxy would be one region for decline of Buddhism in Telangana.
Chala, do you have a question or can I ask another from the audience?
Yeah, go ahead, and then I will ask a question.
Yeah. There is a question from Jehan, who asks that, this whole idea of proposal really at this stage to change the name of Hyderabad to Bhangya. Does this name have a cultural significance for the local people? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a tricky question, but Hyderabad has its own personality, and actually it's a home of all culture. So, and Bhagyanagar, I don't think it will receive any currency because it's a globally now known as Hyderabad, and Hyderabad itself has its own history, right? So I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, that's my position.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead?
Sure.
You have to rotate your camera, I think. Yeah.
There is a question, a very interesting question actually from our founder Vikram. This is actually, I think, very interesting even from my perspective. We have, the Nizam had actually imported a lot of people and slaves from Africa and some parts of Eastern Africa and so on. And many of them still continue to reside in Hyderabad. How come, that culture has not evolved, at least as a subculture? We don't see food or their cultural activities, their celebrations. There is no appearance of any of the slave culture in Hyderabad.
I think the strong trends of Sufism neutralized this slave culture. I mean, so slave means in medieval period. It is not like early medieval period slavery, American slavery. Malik Ambar, I mean, so who was a slave brought from Africa. But he rise to very highest level and formed his own dynasty as well. So there are many groups brought from Africa. They were largely used in court protection and palace protections as well. Our Hapsiguda, I mean, it's Hapsis. I mean, it's actually named after the African slaves. Maybe Hapsiguda might be the Hapsis colony at point of time. And in Hyderabad, you see naming colonies after particular communities. So in Barkas, you have Arabic communities and all that. So I think this. I mean, of course. I mean, there is a this concept of equality in Islam as well. That might have also worked to some extent in leveling things. So you don't see that kind of inequality, particularly in the religious domain. So religion must have, I mean, Islam must have taken care of a lot of things, and Sufism particularly, which believes in complete equality, played a very important role. So I must say that, yeah.
There's a question from Dr. Abhilash Ramesh Bhangya. He asks whether Sufism in the region was able to render any support to the Dalit movements in Telangana, and how effective is contemporary Sufism in addressing the present challenges of Sunni domination in the region.
See, we cannot say directly Sufism supported Dalit movement at that point of time. But there are many evidences which says the lower castes actually embraced Sufism, because there was, of course, by and large in Telangana from the beginning, the influence of Brahmanism is very less because of various historical reasons. So by the time Brahmanism spread to this region, means Buddhism became very strong. Okay. And then it was followed by Jainism, which both came against casteism. And then Vira Saivism, which is very strong in Telangana. That also, fought against casteism and caste discrimination. So by and large, from the beginning, this caste-based discrimination and inequalities are very less. Okay. And if you see the surnames of all the castes, particularly in Telangana region, to some extent in Andhra as well, almost the same. I mean, largely they are called kapos. Okay, and all the OBC communities, all the Sudra upper caste, Reddy, Kamma, Velama caste surnames and OBC communities surnames are the same. That means these communities comes from the same stock. Right. So, and of course, I mean, Sufism played a very important role in further neutralizing this caste discrimination and inequalities. That much we can say. So, yeah, and. And if you see the spread of Islam in Deccan, particularly in Telangana, it was the Sufis who influenced the people to convert into Islam. It was not it was not by force like you see in North India. There were forced conversion in North India, but not in Deccan. And all the Deccan rulers actually were very much in many sense celebrating the local culture and local belief system, and known Deccan ruler imposed jizya as well. So all kinds of things are there. I mean, so only the Mughal rulers imposed jizya in Telangana regions, not the Deccan rulers.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's much discussion on, this word Telugu and Telangana and how it has emerged. There doesn't seem to be much clarity on this or much agreement. Some people say Telangana or Telugu came from Ten, which is like south of the Prakrit or south of Sanskrit land. And then the N got corrupted to L. Is that a correct interpretation?
See, on this, as you said, there are different opinions. But I mean, from Telangana, when I see, from Telangana point of view, Telugu is very much associated with Telangana, because the early civilization of Telangana actually was around the Godavari rivers. I mean, Godavari Basin is in a way birthplace of Telangana culture and civilization. And Godavari was described as Telivana in Buddhist literature and Jataka literature. And it is also mentioned existence of Telinga Janapada in the Puranic literature as well. So going by all this, I think this particular word Telugu must have derived from Telivana or named after Godavari river. That's my strong feeling. Of course, this attaching Andhra and Andhra Bhasha, these all actually popularized by the medieval period Telugu Vaishnava poets. So it is actually Telugu literary figures created all kinds of confusion on this. So somehow, because this literary figures comes from the Andhra region and popularized this more vigorously. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. That very interesting discussion. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and the history of this cultural history, socio and cultural history of Telangana. I'm sure this will set us set a lot of us thinking on how we can try and sustain and retain this unique culture that we have inherited from our past. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best in 2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you,
so
Professor
much.
Bhukya. Thank you on our part also. And I'd also like to tell viewers that Professor Bhukya's book, the link to that is on the YouTube site. So if you're interested, please go and purchase the book. Thank you, Professor Bhukya, for a fascinating talk. And I hope you'll be back soon on Manthan.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Please wait for a couple of minutes as the reel will be continuing to run. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.